what you know about foodborne illness. Foodborne illness, also called foodborne disease. Any sickness that is caused by the consumption of foods or beverages that are contaminated with certain infectious or non-infectious agents. Foodborne illness is a common, costly, sometimes life-threatening, largely preventable public health problem. Foodborne illness is a preventable public health challenge that cause an estimated 48 million illnesses and 3,000 deaths each year. It is an illness that comes from eating contaminated food. Everyone is at risk for getting a foodborne illness. Some people are at greater risk for experiencing a more serious illness or even death should they get a foodborne illness. The onset of symptoms may occur within minutes to weeks and often presents itself as flu-like symptoms. Ill person may experience symptoms such as nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, or fever. Because the symptoms are often flu-like, many people may not recognize that the illness is caused by harmful bacteria or other pathogens in food. Microorganisms may be present on food products when you purchase them. For example, plastic wrapped boneless chicken and ground meat were once part of live chicken or cattle. Raw meat, poultry, seafood and eggs are not sterile. Neither is fresh produce such as lettuce, tomatoes and melons. Thousands of types of bacteria are naturally present in our environment. Microorganisms that cause disease are called pathogens. When certain pathogens enter the food supply, they can cause foodborne illness. Not all the bacteria cause disease in humans. For example, some bacteria are very useful and beneficial in making the cheese and yogurt. Foods including such as safely cooked and ready to eat foods can become cross-contaminated with the pathogens transferred from raw egg and raw meat, poultry, seafood products and juices. Other contaminated products are from food handlers with poor personal hygiene. Most causes of foodborne illness can be prevented with proper cooking or processing of food to destroy the pathogens. Foodborne illness can affect anyone who eats contaminated food. Certain populations are more susceptible to becoming ill with a greater severity of illness. These populations include infants, children, elder individuals, pregnant women, people taking certain kind of medications are immune suppressed, such as cancer patients and diabetic patients. To prevent the foodborne illness, it is very necessary to understand how food becomes unsafe to eat and what proactive measures can be taken to keep food safe. There are many causes of foodborne illness. There will be many versatile reasons for causing the foodborne illnesses. But the basic categories are fall in three categories. First is biological hazards. Biological hazards are the major causes of the foodborne illnesses, which include bacteria, viruses, and parasites. Bacteria and viruses are responsible for most of the foodborne illnesses. Biological hazards are the biggest threat to food safety. They can be inherent in the product or due to the mishandling. For example, time and temperature. Some of these are pathogens or may produce toxins. A pathogenic microorganism cause disease and can vary in the degree of severity. Example of biological hazards include Salmonella, E. coli, and Clostridium botulinum. Next is chemical hazards. Chemical hazards include natural toxins and chemical contaminants. Some natural toxins are associated with the food itself. For example, certain mushrooms. Some are made by the pathogens in the food. When it is time and temperature abused. For example, histamine development in certain seafood species. Some additives such as sulfides can be a hazard to some people. Chemical contamination can occur when products are not used correctly, that is, cleaners. Chemical hazards vary in the aspect of production they are related to. Some potential chemical hazards could be prior to a processor receiving product, such as improper use of pesticides or antimicrobial residues. Others could be chemicals used on processing equipment, such as oil used on the equipment or sanitizers. Other potential chemical hazards may include substances that are safe and used in processing at certain level but can cause illness or injury if consumed at too high concentration, such as sodium nitrite antimicrobial solutions used in the intervention steps. Physical hazards include metal shavings from cans, plastic pieces, or broken glasses. Physical hazards include objects. These are basically the objects that are hard or sharp, such as metal, plastic, stones, glass, pits, wood, and even pieces of bones. Physical hazards can lead to the injuries, such as choking, cuts, or broken teeth. some foreign material in the food product may not be a physical hazard, but rather an undesirable foreign material, such as hair, sand, that are not likely to cause injuries. Bacteria are single-celled organisms which multiply by cell division under appropriate environmental conditions, which include time, temperature, oxygen, and moisture. Most of the bacteria need nutrients to survive. They obtain these nutrients from food. Bacteria grow best in food that is neutral to slightly acidic. As you all know, acidity is the measurement by pH. Microorganisms have different acidity, temperature, and oxygen requirement for their optimal growth. Bacteria need time to grow, and they grow rapidly between the temperature of 41 degree Fahrenheit to 140 degree Fahrenheit. Bacterial growth is slowed at the temperature below 41 degree Fahrenheit and limited at temperature above 140 degree Fahrenheit. Some bacteria require oxygen to grow. They are aerobic bacteria. Some grow when there are no oxygen available. These are anaerobic bacteria. And some can grow with or without the oxygen. They are facultative type of bacteria. Bacteria will grow when food and water is available. If water is bound or tied up with some such as salts and sugars, it is not available to be used by the bacteria. This concept of available water is known as water activity, which is denoted by AW. Some type of the bacteria can be further categorized, such as spore formans and toxins. Some bacteria are spore formers. The spore product protects the organisms during the periods of environmental stress. When the conditions become suitable, the organism germinates from the spore and continues the growth cycle. Some bacteria produce toxins that cause illnesses. These are all about bacteria. But other biological hazards include molds. And molds are multicellular fungi that reproduce by fruiting bodies that break and release thousands of microscopic mold spores, each spore capable of growing under the right condition. Molds can send roots into the food to provide the nourishment to the spores. Molds prefer dark environments, damp environments for the optimal growth. And they grow readily on almost any type of food, as well as walls, ceilings, and other areas of high moistures. Some type of the molds produce toxins that can cause illnesses. Other type of biological hazards include viruses. Viruses are smallest known organisms. These are the smallest organisms. They cannot multiply in the food. They need a human host. Viruses are transmitted to the food from infected individual to the healthy individual. Parasites is also one type of the biological hazards, which includes protozoas and worms. They cannot multiply in food. They multiply in a host cell. Pathogens can cause different types of foodborne illnesses. Once a contaminated food is eaten, illness can be caused by the pathogens themselves is called foodborne infection. Foodborne infection is widely distributed in nature, and this can be isolated from meats, milk, vegetables, and fishes. In this type of foodborne infection, bacteria produce toxins that cause illness. Vomiting type outbreaks have usually been associated with the rice products and other starchy foods such as potatoes, pasta, and cheese product. Food infection is characterized by nausea and vomiting. Half to 6 hours after the ingestion of the contaminated food product. In more severe cases, abdominal cramps and diarrhea might occur, with symptoms lasting up to 24 hours. The transmission of viruses, bacteria are due to the contaminated water, raw milk, and raw or undercooked meat, poultry, or shellfish. Other type of the foodborne illness is foodborne intoxication, caused by the toxins produced in the food by the pathogens. These are also widely distributed in the nature. Do you understand both of these terminologies? I give you another example of this. Foodborne infection is caused by ingestion of in the human intestine, and in the foodborne intoxication, which is caused by the ingestion of the food containing toxins formed by the bacteria, which results from the bacterial growth in the food item. The live microorganism does not have consumed. The microorganisms its toxins. The food must be suitable for the microorganism to grow. The temperature must be suitable for the microorganism to grow. Enough time must be given for the microorganism to grow and produce a time. Enough time must be given to the microorganism to produce its toxins. The food must be eaten. For the foodborne illnesses to occur happens. I will give you some examples of those pathogens which can create foodborne illnesses. Bacillus cereus. Bacillus cereus is an acute intoxication that occurs when this microorganism produces the toxins, causing two types of gastrointestinal illness, which include vomiting and diarrheal symptoms. Its onset time after ingesting is 10 to 16 hours. Abdominal cramps, nausea, and watery diarrhea are the signs and symptoms of this Bacillus cereus presence. The common food sources include vanilla sauces, meats, stews, and gravies. Campylobacteriosis is an infectious disease which is caused by the Campylobacter jejuni, which is a gram-negative rod-shaped bacterium that grows best in high temperature round about 42 degree C and low oxygen environment. These characteristics represent adaptation to growth in its normal habitat. This bacterium may also cause the diseases in humans, but are responsible for less than 1% of human infection. Its onset time after the ingesting is 2 to 5 days. Diarrhea, cramps, fever, and vomiting. Diarrhea may be bloody. All are its signs and symptoms. Raw and undercooked poultry, unpasteurized milk, and contaminated water, or are all its food sources. Botulinum is a rare but serious illness caused by a toxin that attacks the body's nerves and causes the difficulty breathing, muscles paralysis, and even death. This toxin is made by Clostridium botulinum and sometimes Clostridium butyricum. These bacteria can produce the toxins in the body, wounds, and the intestines of the infants. The bacteria that make botulinum toxin are found naturally in many places, but it's rare for them to make people sick. These bacteria make spores which act like protective coating. Spores help the bacteria survive in the environment, even in the extreme conditions. The spores usually do not cause people to become sick, even when they are eaten. But under certain conditions, these spores can grow and make one of the most lethal toxins known. These conditions in which spores can grow and make the toxins include low sugar, low salt, low oxygen, certain amount of water, certain amount of temperature ranges. Its signs and symptoms include vomiting, diarrhea, blurred vision, muscle weakness, difficulty in swallowing, can result in respiratory failure and death. Its common food sources include fish, fermented fish, baked potatoes in aluminum foils, canned foods, and especially home canned fruits and vegetables. Clostridium perfringens. These are the bacteria are one of the most common cause of foodborne illness. These bacteria cause nearly 1 million illnesses in worldwide. These bacteria make spores which act like protective coating that help the bacteria survive under certain conditions such as food when is kept at an unsafe temperature between 40 degree Fahrenheit to 140 degree Fahrenheit. After someone swallows the bacteria, it can produce a toxins that cause diarrhea. Common sources of Clostridium perfringens include meat, poultry, gravies and other foods cooked in large batches and held at an unsafe temperature. Outbreaks tend to happen in places that serve large group of people such as hospitals, cafeterias, nursing homes, prisons and at even with the catered food. Cryptosporidium is a microscopic parasite that causes diarrheal disease. Both the parasite and the disease are commonly known as crypto. There are many species of Cryptosporidium that infect animals, some of which also infect humans. The parasite is protected by an outer shell that allows it to survive outside the body for long periods of time and makes it very tolerant to chlorine disinfection. While this parasite can be spread in several different ways, water is the most common way to spread this parasite. Diarrhea, usually watery diarrhea, stomach cramps, and slightly fever is the signs and symptoms of this type of parasitic infection. Uncooked food and contaminated drinking water are the food sources of this type of parasitic infection. Cyclospora is a coccidian parasite that causes a diarrheal disease called cyclosporiasis in humans, and symptoms include diarrhea, loss of appetite, substantial loss of weight, stomach cramps, vomiting, nausea, and fatigue. Its food sources include various types of fresh produce such as berries, lettuce. E. coli is a type of bacteria that lives in the intestine of many animals, including humans and cattle. Most of the E. coli strains are not harmful to humans. Several strains can have serious health effects when ingested by humans. E. coli lives in the intestines of cattle, is usually ingested in undercooked ground beef. It may also be transmitted through unpasteurized milk and fruit juices. Uncooked produce and contaminated water and person-to-person contact is also very common. Symptoms of infection include severe abdominal cramps and bloody diarrhea. In a small percentage of cases, hemolytic uremic syndrome may develop, which can cause in kidney failure and death. Hepatitis A is a vaccine preventable liver infection caused by the hepatitis A virus. HAV is found in the stool and blood of people who are infected. Hepatitis A is very contagious. It is spread when someone unknowingly ingests the virus, even in microscopic amounts, through close personal contact with an infected person or through eating contaminated food or drinks. Symptoms of hepatitis A can last up to 2 months and include nausea, fatigue, stomach pain, and jaundice. Most people with the hepatitis A do not have long-lasting illness. Listeriosis, which is caused by the bacterium Listeria monocytogenes, is most often transmitted through milk, soft cheese, and ice cream, raw meat, poultry, and raw vegetables. List, Listeria monocytogenes can grow at low temperature. Certain foods that are refrigerated for long period for time are particularly likely routes of transmission. Symptoms of listeriosis include flu-like illness, fever, fatigue, and muscle aches. Some people experience a loss of balance, confusion, or even convulsions. Listeriosis is dangerous for pregnant women because it can cause miscarriage, stillbirth, and for infants and persons with weakened immune system, it can cause meningitis, which is the inflammation of the membrane that cover your brain and spinal cord. Norovirus is a very contagious virus that causes vomiting and diarrhea. People of all ages can get infected and sick with norovirus. You can get norovirus illness many times in your life because there are many different types of noroviruses. Infection with one type of norovirus may not protect you against other types. It is possible to develop immunity to specific type, but it is not known exactly how long immunity lasts. Whether you are susceptible to the norovirus infection is also determined in part by your genes. Symptoms include nausea, vomiting, fever, diarrhea, headache, abdominal cramping. Diarrhea is more prevalent in adults. Vomiting is more common in children. Its food sources of transmission include raw produces, contaminated drinking water, uncooked foods, and cooked foods that are not reheated after contact with an infected food handler, shellfish from contaminated waters. Salmonellosis is caused by Salmonella bacteria, which commonly are found in the intestines of mammals, reptiles, and birds, and usually are spread to the humans through the consumption of foods of animal origin, including eggs, meat, and milk. Symptoms of salmonellosis include fever, headache, abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. In persons weak with the weakened immune system or poor health, it can be life-threatening. Shigella bacteria cause an infection called shigellosis. Most people with Shigella infection have diarrhea, bloody diarrhea, fever, and stomach cramps. Symptoms usually begins 1 to 2 days after infection and last 7 days. People with severe illness and those with underlying conditions that weaken the immune system should be given antibiotic. Antibiotics can shorten the duration of illness and might help reduce the spread of Shigella to others. Washing your hands often with soap and running water and taking other hygiene measures can help protect you and your loved ones from infection. Staphylococcus is a group of bacteria. There are more than 30 types of this type of bacteria. A type called Staphylococcus aureus causes the most infection. Some people carry Staphylococcus bacteria on their skin or in their noses, but they do not get an infection. But if they get a cut or wound, the bacteria can enter the body and cause an infection. Bacteria can spread from person to person. They can also spread on objects such as clothing, towels, equipments, door handles, and remotes. If you have Staphylococcus bacteria and do not handle the food properly when you are preparing it, you can also spread this bacteria to the others. VIBRIO parahemolyticus infection can cause a varying degree of illness, including gastroenteritis, wound infections, and in more severe cases, it can cause sepsis. Its signs and symptoms include watery and bloody diarrhea, abdominal cramps, nausea, vomiting, and fever. Uncooked or raw seafoods such as shellfish are their food sources. Vibrio vulnificus is a species of gram-negative curved rod-shaped bacteria present in a marine environment. Is an extremely virulent bacterium that can cause 3 types of infections: acute gastroenteritis from eating raw or undercooked shellfish. Vibrio vulnificus causes an infection often incurred after eating seafoods especially raw or undercooked oysters. Symptoms include vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. Wound infections can occur in injured skin exposed to contaminated marine water. Vibrio vulnificus bacteria can enter the body through open wounds when swimming or wading in infected waters or by punctures wound from the spines of the fishes. Invasive sepsis can occur after eating raw or undercooked shellfish, especially oysters. Vibrio vulnificus is 80 times more likely to spread into the bloodstream in people with compromised immune system, especially those with the chronic diseases. When this happens, severe symptoms include blistering skin lesions and septic shocks, can sometimes lead to death. Major foodborne illnesses include salmonellosis and E. coli infections are reportable diseases in many places, meaning that infections caused by those agents must be reported by physicians and medical laboratories to local, state, or national health department. Because most cases of foodborne illness are mild and are not diagnosed, the reported number of cases is assumed to be an undercount of the true number of cases. Many laws regulating the production, transport, and preparation of food are intended to prevent foodborne illness and limit its consequences. For example, laws has been implemented to help prevent the contamination of raw food, to mandate its safe preparation and storage, and if necessary, to close restaurants or food suppliers responsible for disease outbreaks or who fail to follow safe food hygiene practices. There are many means by which raw food may be contaminated, including irrigation or washing with unclean water, contamination of meat and poultry with the fecal matter during the slaughtering and packaging process, preparation by food handlers who carry bacteria or viruses on their hands, or using the utensils and preparation surfaces that are not clean. Cooking at a sufficient temperature kills many microbes and parasites. Some microbes may also be present in cooked food, such as when contamination occurs during handling after cooking or pasteurization. Contamination post-cooking or post-pasteurization may not pose a health risk if only a small number of microbes are present. Most bacteria grow rapidly at room temperature, whereas refrigeration or freezing keeps them from multiplying. Always wash your hands with warm water and soap for 20 seconds and dry with a disposable paper towel or clean hand cloth. Alcohol-based hand sanitizers are not a replacement of hand washings. They are not effective if the hands are dirty. They are not effective against noroviruses and they do not eliminate all types of microorganisms. Wash cutting boards, dishes, and utensils after preparing each food item and before you use it for the next food. Use hot, soapy water, rinse with hot water, and air dry or dry with a clean paper towel. Wash countertops after preparing each food item. Use paper towel or clean the dishcloths to wipe kitchen surfaces. Sanitize for added protection for the bacteria on surfaces. You can use the dilute mixtures of chlorine, bleach, and apply to the cleaned countertop and allow to sit for 1 to 2 minutes and air dry or dry with a clean paper towel. Commercial products for sanitizing the home kitchen are also available. Wash the dishcloths often in a washing machine. Store sponge in a place so it can dry after use. Microwave heat a damp sponge for 1 minute. Put sponge in dishwasher cycle. Replace the dish sponge often. Prevent cross-contamination when grocery shopping. Physically separate raw meat, fish and poultry to prevent their juices from dripping onto other foods. This can be done by segregating raw meat, fish and poultry on one side of the shopping cart. Placing raw meat, fish and poultry in separate plastic bags. Designate reusable bags for grocery shopping only. Reusable bags for the raw meat, fish or poultry should never be used for ready-to-eat products. Frequently washed bags, cloth bags should be washed in a machine and machine dried or air dried. Plastic lined bags should be scrubbed using the hot water and soap and air dried. Separate raw meat, fish and poultry in disposable plastic bags before putting them in a reusable bag. Check that both cloth and plastic lined reusable bags are completely dry before storing. Prevent the cross contamination when storing the food in the refrigerator. In the refrigerator, stores the raw meats, fish and poultry below ready to eat and cooked foods. After thawing in the refrigerator, food should remain safe and of good quality for a few days before cooking. Prevent the cross contamination when handling, preparing and serving the food. Thoroughly wash your hands before and after handling the different foods. After using the bathroom and anytime they can become contaminated. Use separate cutting boards for meat and produce. Prepare produce first, then meat. Wash and rinse cutting boards, knives and preparation area after cutting raw material, fish and poultry. These items can be sanitized after cleaning. Use a clean serving plate to serve cooked meat. Do not use the plate that held the raw meat unless it is washed. Throw away any sauce or dip that has been used to marinate raw meat, fish or poultry. Do not use this extra sauce as a dip for cooked food unless it is boiled first. Cook the food thoroughly and use a thermometer to verify the proper temperature was reached. To determine that the proper temperature was reached, place a food thermometer in the thickest part of the food and allow it to equilibrate. Make sure it's not touching bone, fat or gristle. For whole poultry, insert the thermometer into the innermost part of the thigh and wing and the thickest part of the breast. For combination dishes, place the thermometer in the center or thickest portion. Egg dishes and dishes containing the ground meat or poultry should be checked in several places. Clean your food thermometer with hot, soapy water before and after each use. Whatever you become ill after eating contaminated food depends on organism, the amount of exposure, your age and your health. High risk group includes older adults. As you get older, your immune system may not respond as quickly and as effectively to infectious organisms. The immune system of infants and young children have not fully developed, and the people with chronic diseases having a chronic condition such as diabetes, AIDS, or receiving chemotherapy or radiation therapy for cancer reduces the immune response, and pregnancy alters individual's immune system, making it harder to fight off infections that may affect you and your developing baby. If you develop food poisoning, always sip liquids such as sports drinks or water to prevent dehydration. Drinking fluids too quickly can worsen the nausea and vomiting. So try to take small frequent sips over a couple of hours instead of drinking a large amount at once. You should be urinating at regular intervals, and your urine should be light and clear. Infrequent passage of dark urine is a sign of dehydration. Dizziness and lightheadedness also are the symptoms of dehydration. If any of these symptoms occur and you can't drink enough fluids, seek medical attention. Avoid always antidiarrheal medications. They may slow your body's removal of organisms or toxins from your system. If in doubt, check with your doctor about your particular situation. Do not give infants or young children antidiarrheal medications because of potentially serious side effects. Foodborne illness often improves on its own within a few days. Always call your doctor. If your vomiting persists for more than 2 days, diarrhea persists for more than several days, diarrhea turns bloody black, fever is 101 degree Fahrenheit or higher, confusion develops, fainting occurs, worrisome abdominal pain develops. You have severe symptoms such as severe abdominal pain or watery diarrhea, that turns very bloody within 24 hours. Seek emergency medical assistance. If you belong to a high risk group, you suspect botulism poisoning. Botulism is a potentially fatal food poisoning that results from the ingestion of a toxin formed by certain spores in food. Botulinum toxin is most often found in home canned foods, especially green beans or tomatoes. Symptoms of botulism usually begins 12 to 36 hours after eating the contaminated food and may include headache, blurred vision, muscle weakness, and eventual paralysis. Some people also have nausea and vomiting, constipation, urinary retention, difficult breathing, and a dry mouth. These symptoms require the immediate medical attention. Always seek the emergency medical assistance if you have severe symptoms of all these. Always protect yourself and others. Good hand washing, keeping your refrigerator clean and at 40 Fahrenheit, separating raw foods from cooked foods, and avoiding unpasteurized raw milk and cheese.